Hi, everyone, and welcome back to UX Spotlight, the podcast by Userlytics, where we explore how real people interact with real products. I'm Dennis, your host, and today I'll be joined by James Eccleston, a UX designer and product thinker whose recent post about designing for tired, distracted humans sparked a major conversation in the industry. James has worked with companies like Virgin, and he focuses on simplifying digital experience and designing for behavior as it actually happens, not as we imagine it. To understand more of where this thinking comes from, let's start with the beginning. James, I'm going to give you the stage, and perhaps you can tell us a bit about your background and why did you get into user experience?
Okay, so I started user experience before it was called user experience. So when I graduated in the early 2000s, one of my first jobs was to redesign our agency's website in Flash. So I was doing that, and I was always doing kind of experimental kind of digital work at university. And I think I remember in the first job when I did do that site in Flash, we had to pull it down because it took too long to load afterwards. So it was a kind of a real kind of shock to go from kind of university where you just experiment and you do whatever, and there's no real world constraints, and then you meet the real world, and then it's like, no, this is taking 1 minute to load. You can't do that. I was like, oh, why? So as a 22-year-old, that was a big shock. And then after that, I then worked for a couple of different companies in London, and I did some editorial design, and then I moved on to Virgin, and there we did a bit of everything. Basically, it was kind of technically in their brand team, but we also did some digital work, spanned a few different of their brands as well. And I think that was the time when people were starting to take user experience a little bit more seriously. And then after that, I moved to Buenos Aires and I started working for a startup. And that's when the kind of UX as a career really took off. And that was about 15 years ago. And we're working in quite a fast paced environment, launching products very, very quickly, changing products very quickly, testing in the market. And then after that, I decided to move back to Europe. I decided to move to Madrid. And then from 2015, that's when I started Bridge Studio, and we focus on UX and branding.
Amazing. That's quite of a story, and it's rather interesting that you started it somehow before user experience was known as it is right now. Perhaps you can point to an early experience that shaped your thinking.
Yeah, so I think it was in Buenos Aires. It's like 15 years ago when I started working on kind of, I think it's a mobile phone top up app, and I wanted to do a lot of research, wanted to talk to the users, and the founder of the company was like, "No, let's just do it. Just get it out." And let's see if it works or not. And that was quite shocking at the time. I was like, no, you've got to do all this kind of stuff first. And it's like, no, just move fast and break things. All the kind of typical cliche stuff you hear from startup founders now. And that was quite shocking. So, but I totally agree with it now. I'm like, yeah, okay. Sometimes it's best to get stuff done. I'd always say you've got to test it somehow beforehand, whether that's guerrilla testing. Some type of testing was better than nothing, and that can be done very, very quickly. But yeah, so I think that kind of shaped my thinking of how when you see kind of the UX process explained online, it just seems very clinical and very perfect, where that doesn't really happen in a lot of companies today.
That's very true, actually. I remember taking a webinar, and this person who explained us about ideating and creating a MVP told us that if you're not ashamed by your first prototype, then you're just clearly not doing something right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the whole process. Just get out there and do it. And
Yeah,
don't
I
waste.
mean, you can introduce, sometimes you will have, some projects will be more perfect than others, and you've got to know all the process, but you adapt your process as you go, and to which other company you're working for, which other client you're working for, because sometimes there's not the budget, there's not the time, or sometimes if you're working in a bigger corporation, you have to advocate for good UX practice and then really, really fight for it. So again, it's about being adaptable, I think.
Understandable, indeed. And I remember you mentioning a bit of your experience at Virgin, and perhaps you can tell us what did you learn from your time working in a large company like Virgin?
Quite a few things actually. So I remember there's as a product designer or UX designer, brand designer, you're just a very small part of a big machine. And coming from a design agency where design is everything and it's, you suddenly find out that design is very important, but it's just one aspect of a product. And there's lots of moving parts, there's lots of influencers, lots of stakeholders involved. And it's as much about politics as it is about good design.
Okay, it's much as about politics as it is for good design. Interesting. It's nice that you mentioned that because that leads us right into one of the biggest ideas from your post, actually. And that would be the myth of the perfectly focused user, right? The person who never gets anything wrong and it's always easy for them to operate on every platform. They're never confused. And why do you think we still design for ideal attentive users?
I think there's a couple of reasons there. I think when you start a project, sometimes you don't have all the information that you ideally would like. So you do a rough user persona, which is fine. That they are just a guide. And then I think what a lot of people forget to do is update that user persona as they go along, as they do more testing, as they speak to more users, as the product changes, as the user changes, as the market changes, and keep that kind of very, very fresh. And sometimes these can be kind of like set in stone somewhere in Figma, and then you kind of forget about it, whereas you should always be adapting. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why it starts off a little bit too clean, a little bit too good, basically.
And talking about user personas, what do you think it's the gap between personas and real human behavior?
Yeah. So I think it's the gap in really understanding people and having that empathy for people. And sometimes as a designer, you just might be a little bit removed, or you might not have access. So it's, again, like just kind of repeating what I said. So it's kind of always going back and updating your thinking on that, and constantly talking to your end user. I think that's important. And then when you're designing, all the information should be kind of there, and you should be able to kind of subconsciously design. And then after that, it's just testing, making sure that this really works for the people you've intended it to.
Talking about this, do you think it's easy for UX teams to get, for example, perhaps disconnected from the real world, from the real users that they're actually designing for?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of commercial pressures working in companies today where you you might have a lot of time pressure to get this done as well, and or you might not. You might be it might be a very hierarchical kind of company where the designer's sitting towards the bottom of the structure, so it's very hard to kind of advocate and say, right, we need this, and there's ways of doing that. There's, you need to kind of really show kind of results and KPIs and say, look, this is one design that we've done that after speaking to a user, after testing, that has improved this, and has improved conversion by X amount. So you have to advocate. So there's a lot of reasons there, and it could be time, money, people above you not believing in the process. It could be a product where you're working for a company where it's just like, right, let's just copy this project and get it done. Go. That's all we do. Is we've got to move quick, 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 quick. So I think there's a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I guess it depends who your target audience is. I guess it depends on certain circumstances, the internal workarounds of your company or the company that
Hmm.
it's. So I guess there are multiple things to consider. But what's really interesting right now and what I want to focus right now is the three core principles that you had. And I kind of want to break them all down and take
Hmm.
one by one and explore them as such. So perhaps let's start with the first one. What do you mean by cut in half and then half again?
Okay, so that's being very brutal of what needs to go on the screen or in your designs, because it's especially if you're working in a kind of slightly in silos, you might get copy from somewhere and like that is overwritten. It doesn't need to be
Yeah.
like that. So, and then just thinking, right, does this really need to be there? What happens if we skip this step? Do we need to explain that or rethink of like what's the quickest way of arriving to an endpoint? What's the least amount of information to put on there? So again, can we cut it by half, and then can we do that again? Is a very good test of like what really needs to be on the screen.
Okay, so it's perhaps it's about cutting off unuseful information in data,
Yeah,
perhaps.
it's about reassessing if something's really necessary. Because a lot of times, like, oh, we really need that checkbox. It's like, well, can we show it somewhere else? Can we do it in a different way? Can we do it automatically? So yeah, it's about just reframing things as well as just cutting.
Okay, and if you can cut it a second time, then it means you probably don't really need it, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. It's
Understandable.
it's about the kind of cutting at the second is about pushing it. So how far can we push this? I think one exercise I like to do is kind of push it so far it breaks. At what point do we break? Because we're very precious sometimes as designers. Like, no, I really like how that works, and I invest a lot of time in that. So, but if we take it out, is it broken? No. Okay, let's carry on.
Do you perhaps have a real life example where this made a difference?
Yeah, I was thinking about it today actually. So we're redesigning a prepaid card application for an African company, and up front they had lots of kind of, I don't know how to describe it really, kind of rules and things to take note of when you're topping up your card. Like, okay, you must have your mobile ready. This wallet must link to this currency, and it was almost like a page full of things to remember. And we're like, that is just not needed. It's like we can remind them at the time when they do that. So if they do try to connect a wallet in a different currency, we can just say, you can't do that. Or touching on some other points, you don't give them the option to do that in the first place. So we don't have to tell them that you can't do that. And they should be able to figure out, oh, I can't have a Kenyan shilling with a UK pound account or something like that. So we're trying to make it obvious.
So once we reduce the mental effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next challenge is in testing how people actually behave,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then perhaps you can enlighten us with your perspective on why are clean testing environments unrealistic, or are they unrealistic?
I think they will give you suboptimal results. Again, it's all a guide. It's all there to help us design a better product. But when we're testing a very clean environment, everything's perfect. Whereas in the real world, so you might be testing for an app to buy train tickets, let's say, and you might not be sat at a desk doing that. So you'll have other pressures come in at the time, other distractions that will change how you use that. So that's why a clean environment might not represent the environment that the user will be in at the time.
So talking about distractions, how do you stimulate real world distractions?
Okay, there's quite a few different ways of doing that, and it depends on what app you're also what product you're designing and where it will be used. But some of the things you can do is you can put a time pressure on. It's like, okay, you have to book a ticket within 2 minutes. The train is coming now. So you put like a time pressure on. So people are getting a little bit nervous. You might have to. Another good one is, okay, can we test this at walking around the studio? And then that's a cognitive load kind of thing. So you're walking in and out of desks. There's people talking to you. So there's distractions, things like that. Can you do it while watching Netflix? Can you do it with somebody trying to talk to you at the same time? Um, can you complete half the task, get distracted by somebody, and come back to it 2 minutes later, and then you know where you are and everything's fine. So again, that's kind of like is it easy to memorize where you are and stuff and plan where you are? So there's a few different kind of tips and tricks that we use.
That's an interesting example that you gave. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I had this same thing happening to me with the train ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I based in the Netherlands. I live in the Netherlands, and there's a major train line company here, and their interface it's very user friendly. It's very
Mm-hmm.
easy to use, and I've used it tens of hundreds of times before. So I know where to go exactly to get a ticket if I needed to get in a in a very rapid time. But because of the pressure, I was also in a train station. I could hear the trains, and then all this pressure built up. I was getting nervous, and I didn't know where to press and what to press, and how to get to the exact point on the platform to get the ticket on their website. Um, and so you find yourself in this moments where even platforms that you as a user know how to use them because you use them hundreds of times, kind of still a bit difficult sometimes because of the pressure. Um, so I guess that's where real good design comes in. That makes it even easier in those moments to actually access what you need to access.
Yeah, yeah, totally. You can imagine how when you're nervous or you're moving your hand around walking, suddenly that beautiful small typography that's in a light shade of gray is very hard to read.
Indeed. Well, this moves us to the third principle, and I would say even with good testing, users still run into issues unless the product is designed so errors can't happen. And perhaps you can tell us, what do you mean when you say error messages point to deeper design issues?
Yeah, so the ideal state would be where a user can't make an error. So if they've made an error, it's like, well, they didn't mean to make that error, so there's something that's failed in there. And unless they really have just mistyped their postcode, and that's when, or actually is very helpful. So things like if you're buying a train ticket in the future, you shouldn't have an option to select a train ticket in the past, so that option shouldn't be available for you to make. So if you're showing an error saying this date does not exist, it's like, or if you selected if you're trying to buy a train ticket 6 months in advance, but it only lets you buy 3 months in advance, and then it shows you an error. It's like, oh, that's a waste of time. That's annoyed me now. That's like if you imagine going up to a kiosk and saying, okay, I'd like a train ticket for June next year, and they're like, and then they're like, oh, sorry, we don't do it. And then you're like, okay, when can I buy it? Okay, it's up to 3 months. So that's, again, that extra communication slows
Yeah.
everything down. So yeah, trying to make sure errors are impossible to make where possible.
Could you perhaps think of a real example of an error-proof design?
So yeah, so the ones I just mentioned, basically. So just trying not to let the user select a date or something, keeping them on kind of guardrails. So real examples are, there's a fintech we work for in Africa, and there's transactions, and you can only search 6 months in the past. You can't search any further back. So rather than showing an error, we'll basically grey out the calendar and just say we can't search basically that far back because of technical reasons. So yeah, I think that would be probably the best kind of real life example.
Perhaps now it's the best time to connect this thinking to something that teams often struggle with, which is metrics. We all love
Mm-hmm.
metrics. Um, in your opinion, which metrics actually reflect real human success?
Real human success, apart from where you're born and how rich your parents are. Okay, real human success. So one example I thought of was how you pay with a mobile these days, and how you just double click on the iPhone. You just double click and swipe that, and that's like, wow. And I just thought, I don't even think about that anymore. That's just naturally what happens now. And I think if you could describe that as a key performance indicator of like not having to think about it as a human, of it being a reaction and not a planned thought, of where you just reach into your pocket, move out, double tap, boom, gone. And you haven't had to think, okay, select, I have to do this, therefore I have to do X, Y, and Z. So I think that's probably an example of very successful kind of UX.
Making people's lives easier in this way.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you. That's a real metric for success.
Mm.
And I experience it in my day every day with things that I just take for granted that they exist, and I cannot imagine the world living without it like this.
Yeah.
Uh, like I just click on something and I'm instantly on YouTube, for example, a platform where I have access to everything that I can possibly
Hmm.
want to watch, or ChatGPT or Gemini. I have access
Yeah.
to information at the speed of a button. which
Yeah, the
people
design doesn't get in the way.
yeah, exactly. And now, let's say, for example, that you're in a team that has split opinions.
Hmm.
How do you advocate for simplicity in environments that prefer feature richness?
Okay, so I think you'll have to understand the reasons behind the kind of feature richness. Is there a valid reason for that? And then once you understand, okay, why do you need these three other features? Then you can start to say, is there a solution that fits both of us? So can we do this another way? Uh, is is this feature really, really needed? Can can we do this in version 2? Which is always my favorite, is to delay. And then when the teams had time to reflect and see, well, this product's actually working fine as it is. So it's a bit of a dark way of doing this, say delaying. It's like, yeah, we do it in the next round, do it in the next round. So I don't advocate for it all the time. And then after that, you can tell stories. So you can say, originally Instagram started off with lots of different functionality and they didn't have much success. Then they went straight down to the sharing photos and maybe some filters. And then even the filters, I think, disappeared after a while, or they were more subtle. So giving real world examples and then talking about global principles like the 80-20 rule, and say like 80% of your profits will come from 20% of your actions. So we can say we don't need more things because all the profit for this will be coming from these one or two things. And then give other examples of, right, okay, can we find a similar product that does what we want to do and is successful? Maybe it starts to break down a little bit when you look at super apps in Asia, where they kind of have a bit of everything in there, but there's some weird reasons behind that. Maybe it's to do with internet speed or corporations controlling, but that's another story. So again, it's kind of understanding their point of view and then coming up with a solution that kind of fits both.
Okay, it's never one thing. It's always maybe perhaps it's maybe a combination of things and circumstances.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally. Because there's been a lot of times as a designer, I was like, I just want it minimal. I just want to do this very simple. And
yeah,
then I've just been in my little box. And then sometimes the client's right. Sometimes, or most of the time, the client is right because they know the product. They're closer to the user. And then I'll do it. So it took me a very long time to be like, okay, I'll do my design and I'll do the design that they want. And then we'll test them. And then it's like, oh, actually, yeah, that tests really well. That's good. That's good what they suggested. And again, you can always kind of try both as well if you've got a luxury of time.
is it difficult to talk your client into agreeing with your idea of their product rather than their idea of how it should be?
I don't see it as talking them into my idea of the design. I just want the best solution for them, and I try to stay as open minded as possible. So when they suggest something, it's like, okay, let's try it, let's do it, let's see what that looks like, and let's test it. And then if it doesn't test very well, it's like, okay, we shouldn't do it. I think the problem comes when you have a client or a a founder or somebody who wants something very specific and we don't have time to test, we don't have other things, just get it done because I say so. And then at the end of the day, all you can do is, right, okay, this is my version of the design and this is your version of the design. I think this is better because this, and this. I understand why you've done this and you have final say here. But as a designer, this is what I say, what I think we should do. And then it's just kind of standing back a little bit and not being too precious about the design. And
Yeah,
then trying to use data A/B testing when you can to support your argument. But there's sometimes, the person with the money has the final say sometimes.
yeah. So in the end, is finding the best design, regardless of whose idea is it or
Yeah.
which one you choose. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And now shifting back a bit to your post, that was very interesting. What interesting conversations do you think, or do you know, that came out of this viral post of yours?
Conversations that came out of that. I had a few people say, well, that's what user personas are supposed to be. And they kind of
Yeah,
misinterpreted kind of irony there or sarcasm. in there. So again, but that all comes back to like, right, your user persona should be like that. So yeah, but there's a lot of people that are in agreement with it as well. It's like, yeah, we really should be thinking about kind of stressed people. People are not paying attention all the time. That our design isn't the most important thing in their lives right now.
Well, did you found that you had perhaps people reaching out to you with curious questions, people reaching out to you maybe fiercely disagreeing with you, or people agreeing with you? If you were to perhaps measure the two columns, did you had more positive or negative feedback from this?
Oh, it's overwhelmingly positive. I think the ones that could be interpreted negatively didn't quite interpret the kind of slight sarcasm in the post, or just didn't quite get my point. But most of it was very positive, and I think LinkedIn is a platform that is very, very positive. Maybe it's because people don't want to be seen as criticizing on a professional platform. And I'm sure if that was on Twitter, it would be very different.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, they're two different target audiences for
Yeah.
and users for LinkedIn and X or Twitter or Instagram as well.
Yeah.
So you're definitely right about that. I agree with you. I think most of the messages that I've seen as well were positive. And to just kind of close it off with this topic of metrics, as you know, at Userlytics we talk a lot about real world behavior versus ideal assumptions. So I'm
Mhm.
really curious about how you think teams in general should measure success.
I think it's the kind of that's a very good question. I tempt just to say, right, what's the goal of the product, and are we meeting that goal? And are going back to what we're talking about, does this kind of seamlessly fit into people's lives? Is it is Do they have to think about it too much? So I think that should be the goal at the end of the day. I don't know if I need to expand on that anymore.
I agree with you. I think you're right about this. Well, to kind of shift it to my favorite part of the podcast of the episode, this is the round that I'm always waiting for the most. As I told you, this is the quickfire round, and to just kind of reintroduce it to the listeners out there, this is a topic where I'm gonna ask the guest, in this case, James, a question, and he has to tell me the first thing that comes to his mind. And there's a time limit on this. You usually kind of have 1 minute per question, but feel free to just tell us whatever comes to your mind. The first question is one UX pattern you wish would disappear.
Fake scarcity. Only one product left. It's like we all know that's not one product left. And then apart from that, getting signed up to stuff when I log in. I think there's some different laws in the US and Europe, but I really do not like getting sent marketing emails every day when I've signed up for something and I haven't checked that little box. So I think those are the two that come to mind.
Oh yeah, for realizing this, I made accounts everywhere with one email. It's the main email that I
Hmm.
have, and then I keep receiving like newsletters and things from
Yeah.
various, like maybe 20 new emails every day, and I would have to like keep unsubscribing, and it was kind of a long annoying process. And now I'm extra careful when I'm signing up for something. I'm always making sure not to click the sign up for the newsletter, sign up for. No,
Yeah.
I don't want that. That's true. Second question, a product that nails simplicity.
I'd have to say my UK banking app, Nationwide. You log on and it just has your savings account and your current account, and there's nothing else on the screen apart from the navigation. I think they might have a little marketing message in there, so that really, really nails simplicity there. And it's all that I want. My Spanish one, I get you log in. Well, you come to the first screen, you have to click on Face ID, log in, and there's tons of marketing messages, and you get there and you're just like, oh, this is just undigestible. So yeah, nationwide banking app, and probably Wise. I really enjoy using Wise. It just seems to be so intuitive and just very simple. And, they've got to display a lot of information about how things are transferred, how much it will cost, all that kind of stuff. And I think they're very easy to use. Although I think it has become a little bit more complicated recently, and they've put a few more stuff on the home screen recently. So,
Yeah, mentioning the Face ID identificator. You know what I really hate about certain apps? The two-step verification.
oh god,
When
yeah,
when they also like send you a code somewhere and you have to like look through the email or look through your messages, the code, and copy the code. I understand there's some security reasons in
yeah,
diverse apps in whatever line that is, but it's just annoying. Sometimes it's just
yeah.
annoying because you might not have access to that email in that moment, and it's just
Mm,
um.
that
So
drives
maybe
me mad.
yeah,
Especially with
that
the
does me
Spanish banking app as well, because when I transfer money, I have to go to a text message. I can't even copy and paste it. I have to remember 6 digits, and being dyslexic, that's really hard for me. So I have to okay, do this. Whereas Wise, it's just, for some reason, the law doesn't apply to them, or maybe they've just figured out that Face ID is enough. And maybe there's more rules with the Spanish government or something with transferring, but you'd think once you've logged in with Face ID and you've got access to everything, you should be able to do anything else. So it's very strange. And maybe there are some legal things in there, but I would like to know why they can't do that with Face ID.
Or, for example, when I'm making an online payment, even the smallest one, perhaps, when I'm making it with my Dutch bank account, I can just go through it, no verification, no nothing. Whenever I
Mm,
tried it with a popular app as well, like Revolut, for example,
mm,
it all asked me to go on the app in my phone and approve the payment, and it's just annoying. And it has like this timer of 5 minutes, and if I don't do it in 5 minutes,
mm.
then
Oh god, yeah, yeah.
and I just don't like this. This extra steps that makes it more annoying to use.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's some kind of legal stuff why you have to do that,
I
but
assume
then
so,
it's
yeah.
strange how some don't do that, and yeah.
Indeed. Now, the third question.
Hmm.
A UX hill you would die on.
I think guerrilla testing. You have to just test stuff quickly, and rather than just doing it and then sending it. It's Every design should be tested, and it's surprising how many errors you see when you test something. And it's always great to be able to find your exact user and an exact environment, but sometimes that's not always possible. So it might just be someone in the office, a developer, and you just put it in front of them. And you just test really, really quickly, and I think that's probably the biggest bang for buck you can get for improving your design.
That's actually an interesting answer. And the next question is, do you have a favorite tool for sketching early ideas?
Yeah, pen or pencil.
Huh. Pen and classic. Pen and paper. Pen and
Yeah,
paper. You know, I also found that whenever I write my ideas down on an actual piece of paper, there's something different to it than just typing it on a computer.
yeah.
It's like I'm more focused on thinking about it. It's like I can see the steps that I need to take into solving whatever I'm trying to
Hmm.
fix or seeing clearer in a certain way.
Yeah, I think your brain works differently, and you're not bothered about how many pixels is this on a 4 pixel grid or anything like that. I read somewhere that apparently when students take notes, if they write them, they're more likely to remember them than typing on a laptop. I have to dig out that bit of research, but I think there might be something similar with the connection of the brain and the hand, the physically moving. So,
I assume so.
and you get into a flow state easier, maybe.
I think you're right about that. And let's imagine that we're in an alternative universe. And for example, if not a UX designer, what would you be doing?
What would I be doing? I probably one or two things. Maybe a marine biologist. I studied it for a couple of months before quitting and studying design. So I think getting out from behind the screen is very nice. If not, making jam somewhere. Bought a second house in the mountains in Spain, and I was thinking about buying some land, making some jam out of figs. and things like that. So getting back to something completely different, dealing with people and food related.
Maybe some wine, maybe some olive oil as well.
Yeah. I picked some olives off the trees there, and I've tried to like cure them, but I haven't, I haven't been able to do it properly yet because you got to wait like a month. You got to put them in water with salt for like change the water every day or something, and I just haven't managed to do it properly.
That would be a peaceful life indeed. I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
Uh, and well, that last question concludes our quickfire round. And as we draw close to the end of our episode today, before we wrap up, let's leave the listeners with something practical. What is one action or tip that people should remember from listening to this episode?
So I think summing it up is don't assume that the product you're designing is going to be the center, the most important thing in your user's life. It just might be something quick, and they might be thinking about something else. So again, it comes back to kind of maybe a little bit of a cliche of like design for your young nephew or niece and your grandmother. And if you can hit those two, your product's going to work really well.
That's a nice way to end. Thank you very much. And before I let you go, perhaps you can tell us where can people find you or follow you on social media.
Okay, so you can find our website, Bridge Studio, my agency online, bridgestudio.co, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. That's the platform where you always get good feedback on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Well, you heard it, folks. LinkedIn or the personal website of the agency. James, thank you so much for joining us. This was a real valuable conversation. And thank you to everyone listening to UX Spotlight. This is Dennis from Userlytics, and we'll see you in the next episode. Have a good one,
Cheers,
everyone.
thanks.